Clean Break Audiobook by Jacqueline Wilson. Chapter 8. Dad didn't come back. It looked as if he meant it. A clean break. He sent Mum a cheque with a Scottish postmark on the envelope. He didn't put his address. He didn't write a letter either. He just scribbled on the back of the cheque, "Love from Frankie," and "Kiss, kiss, kiss" to the kids. "That's not a proper letter we can keep," I said sadly. "It's not a proper cheque either," Gran sneered. "He still owes me thousands, and yet he's acting like Lord Bountiful, sending your mum a cheque for £100, as if that's proper maintenance." £100 seemed like a huge amount to me. I thought of running around the Flowerfields shopping centre with 100 gold coins in my school bag. I could go to the Bear Factory, buy a cuddly black cat with his own cute pyjamas, go to the bookshop and buy an entire set of Jenna Williams stories. I could go to Claire's Accessories and buy all sorts of slides and scrunchies, glittering makeup. I could go to the Pick and Mix sweet store and choose a whole sack full of sweets, and I'd still have heaps left to buy presents for Vita and Maxie. Then I thought of all the boring stuff like bills in brown envelopes and cornflakes and loo rolls, spaghetti and milk, and Maxie's new school shirt, shoes, and Vita's leotard for ballet, and my new winter coat. Maybe £100 wasn't very much after all. I put Dancer on my hand and made her talk to me. "Cheer up, Princess Emerald," she said. "Your dad won't let you down. He's the most wonderful man in the whole world. You know he is. I'm sure there'll be another cheque soon. This time there'll be a proper letter we can keep. Just you wait and see." I waited. Dad didn't send anything. He didn't pay rent to his pink palace either. The fairies grew dusty behind the bars. "I don't know what to do," Mum said. "I can't keep it on. I can't be in two places at once. It never brought much money in anyway, even when Frankie was around. We'll have to let it go." "You can't close Fairyland," I said, appalled. "What will Dad do when he comes back?" "Get this into your head once and for all, Em. He's not coming back," said Mum, taking hold of me by the shoulders and speaking to me practically nose to nose. "Yes, he is, yes, he is, yes, he is," I said inside my head. I made Dancer whisper it too, to Vita and Maxie, and me every night when we went to bed. We all believed her. Maybe Mum did too, in spite of what she said. She paid the Fairyland rent herself right up until Easter. We'd all started hoping that Dad would come back by then, even if it was just for a visit. He'd always made a special day out of Easter. I remember one Easter when Vita was very little and Maxie was just a baby. Dad hired a huge rabbit costume from a fancy dress store and pretended to be the Easter bunny, crouching down and hopping, flicking his loppy ears from side to side. Yet another year, he hid hundreds of tiny wrapped chocolate eggs in every room of the house and all over the garden, and we spent the whole Easter morning running around like crazy, seeing who could find the most. Me. Last year, Dad gave us all different eggs. Maxie got a big chocolate egg wrapped in yellow cellophane with a toy mother hen and 3 fluffy chicks tucked in a ribbon fastening. Vita got a pink Angelina ballerina egg with a tiny storybook attached. I got a Casper Dream fairy egg with a set of Casper Dream flower fairy postcards. He gave Mum a very special egg too, with worlds of green and grey and pink, very smooth and cool to touch. "It's called a peace egg," Dad told her. "You hold it in your hand and it calms you down when you're feeling stressed." Mum held her egg a lot through January and February and March. Sometimes she rolled it around over her forehead as if she was trying to soothe all the worries in her head. She held on to it for most of this Easter day. Mum tried her hardest to make it special for us. She made us our favourite boiled eggs for breakfast, and she even drew smiley faces on each one. We had chocolate eggs too, big luxury eggs with bright satin ribbons. When we bit into them, teeth clunking against the hard chocolate, we found little truffles wrapped inside. Mum said we could eat as much chocolate as we liked, but we were all keyed up waiting for Dad to come with his Easter surprises. We waited all morning. Gran cooked a chicken for lunch. We waited all afternoon. Gran suggested we all went for a walk in the park, but we stared at her as if she was mad. We didn't want to risk missing Dad. "He's not going to come," Gran said to Mum. "You know he's not. You haven't seen sight nor sound of him, and since that dreadful day when he ran off with the kids." "He didn't run off with us, Gran. It was just a day out," I said heavily. "A day and a half of night searching, with the police and everything," Gran sniffed. "I have heard from him," Mum said. "You know he sent another cheque last week and he put Happy Easter to all of us. So I thought..." Mum's hand tightened on her peace egg. You thought he'd come running back with his silly fancy presents, getting the kids all overexcited and driving you mental, Gran said. Shut up, Mum said. She suddenly flexed her arm and hurled the peace egg to the other side of the room. It landed with such a clunk we all jumped. The peace egg stayed smoothly intact, but it dented Gran's video recorder and chipped a big lump out of Gran's skirting board. Oh God, I'm so sorry, Mum started to sob. We thought Gran would be furious. Her eyes filled with tears too. She went to Mum and put her arms around her. You poor silly girl, Gran said. I can't bear to see you sitting there all tense and desperate, longing for him. You're making yourself ill. Look how thin you've got. I looked at Mum properly. I hadn't noticed. She really had got thin. Her eyes were too big in her bony face. Her wrists looked as though they might snap, and her jeans were really baggy on her now, so that she had to keep them up with her belt. It wasn't fair. I missed Dad every bit as much as Mum, and yet I hadn't got thin. I'd got fatter and fatter and fatter. It didn't stop me creeping away and eating my entire Easter egg in one go. I licked and nibbled and gnawed until every last crumb was gone. My mouth was a mush of chocolate, pink tongue covered, my milky brown teeth. I imagined chocolate throat and a chocolate stomach, yet I still felt empty. I was like an enormous chocolate hollow egg. If anyone held me too hard, I'd shatter into 1,000 tiny shards. I felt so lonely during the Easter holidays. Whenever we went out to the shops or the park or the swimming baths, there were fathers everywhere. They were making the teddies talk to the little kids in the bear factory. They were helping their kids feed the ducks and pushing the swings and kicking footballs. They were jumping up and down, playing ring o' rosies in the water. There were dads in every television programme making a fuss of their kids. One time we even spotted our dad in an old film. It was just a glimpse in a crowd, but the plait was easy to spot. It's Dad! It's Dad! I said. Dad! Vita screamed as if he could hear her. Maxie didn't say anything. He turned his back to the television. He'd stopped talking about Dad the last few weeks. He just looked blank when Vita and I said his name. Maybe he's forgotten him, said Vita when we were getting ready for bed. Gran was in the bathroom with Maxie washing his hair. He'd poured concentrated Ribena over his head, saying he wanted to dye his hair purple. Don't be silly, Vita. He can't possibly have forgotten Dad already. Well, he's such a baby. I'm totally weird, said Vita. I know, but it's only been 3 months since we saw Dad. 3 months, 2 weeks and 4 days, said Vita. I stared at her. Vita could barely add 2 and 2. How do you know that exactly? Because I've been marking it off on my calendar, said Vita. What calendar? I made it at school just before Christmas. We had to stick it on an old card and do glitter, and I got bored and I did a red glitter bikini on Jesus. Mummy and the teacher got cross with me and said I'd spoiled my calendar and couldn't send it off to anyone. So I put it in my desk, and now I mark off the days. You could have given the calendar to Mum or Dad. Dad would have found it ever so funny, I said. Well, I could give it to him when he comes back. I could do red glitter hearts all round the edge of the dates. I thought of her own little red heart thumping with love for Dad under her fluffy kitten jumper Gran had knitted for her. I didn't always like Vita, but I loved her a lot. I wanted to give her a big hug, but I knew she'd wriggle away and fuss and say I was squashing her. I put Dancer on instead, and she gently hugged Vita's little stalk neck, and she blew breathy kisses into her ear. Make Dancer kiss me, Maxie said, running into our room, stark naked. His newly washed hair stuck up in black spikes. Dancer doesn't want to kiss a silly old bear baby boys, said Vita primly. Put something on, Maxie. We don't want to see your woggly bits. I'm so glad I'm a girl, aren't you, Em? Dad's always said I was his favourite little girl. He always said I was his favourite grown-up girl, I said. I wondered if he said that to Sarah now. Maxie didn't join in. He gathered up all his bears, a great fatty furry bundle. Tatty fairy bundle. We're all bears, he shouted. I'm bear, and they're bear. We're all bears, he shrieked with laughter and yelled it over and over again in case we hadn't got it the first time. We did our best to ignore him, so he started nudging us with his teddies. He got wilder, bludgeoning us with their bare limbs. One paw went right in my eye, and it hurt a lot. I frequently didn't like Maxie, and I recently realised it was actually hard to remember that I loved him. He'd always been silly, but now he acted positively demented, running around all over the place, yelling his head off, throwing baby tantrums in the supermarket and the street. Mum worried he might have a serious problem and thought she should take him to the doctor. That child doesn't need a doctor. He needs an old-fashioned smack bottom, said Gran. Plus a daily dose of syrup of figs to keep him regular. He spends hours in the toilet. I'm not surprised, all his finicky ways with his food. Won't eat this, won't eat that, and fuss, fuss, fuss if his beans touch his egg or his chips. Are they not in line? For pity's sake, I'd have never let you play me up like that, Julie. Maxie's traumatised, Mum, our mum protested. Nonsense. He's simply spoilt rotten. I've always thought you were an idiot pandering to him the way you do, giving in to every little fear and fancy. You've got to help him toughen up. After all, Maxie's not going to be the man of the family now. Vita and I collapsed into helpless laughter at the idea of Maxie, the man, protecting us in any way whatsoever. Mum was near tears, but she started snorting with laughter too. Even Gran couldn't help smiling. Maxie ran amok, laughing like a hyena, though he didn't understand the joke. We called him Maxie the Man after that. For a couple of days he strutted around, growling in a deep voice as he could manage, calling Vita and me his little girlies. He did his best to boss us about. We put up with it for a while because it was quite funny at times. Mum and Gran joined in too, letting Maxie order them around. He took to calling Mum woman, and it made her laugh. Don't you go calling me woman, you sauce box, said Gran, shaking her finger at Maxie. Gran's old woman, I whispered to Vita. I heard that, she said sharply. I don't think we should encourage Maxie. He'll carry on in this manner when he's back at school, trying to tell the teachers what to do. Gran had a point. I tried to get this across to Maxie, but he stood shaking his head at me, hands on his funny little hips. Don't you take that tone of voice with me, little girlie, he said, coming out with one of Gran's favourite phrases. Kindly remember, I am the man of the house. No, you're not, you silly little squirt, said Vita. Dad's the man of the house. Maxie didn't react. Maxie, you do remember Dad, don't you? I asked. Maxie shrugged. He tried to tell us off again, his hands clutching his sides so tightly that his shorts rose up comically up each leg. You look so stupid, said Vita. No wonder they call you names at school. What names do they call him? I asked. They called me names and it was horrible, but I couldn't stand it if little Maxie was being teased like that too. They called him heaps of different names, said Vita. No, they don't, said Maxie. Yes, they do. All the infants call him stuff. Like what? Like Maxie Wee Wee, Maxie Pee Pee, Maxie Whittle. Ooh! Maxie leaped up and yanked Maxie leaped up at Vita and yanked her wispy hair so hard he pulled out a whole hank. Vita shoved Maxie violently. He toppled and banged his head hard. Vita jumped on top of him and banged his head again and again harder. Mum and Nan came rushing. They had to prise them apart, both scarlet and screaming. For pity's sake, what's the matter with you both? Are you trying to kill each other? Said Gran, shaking them both. Yes, they both roared. Come on, I'm not having children behave like little devils in my house. Up to bed this minute, both of you. Gran seized hold of them by the wrists and hauled them upstairs. Mum, stop it. They're upset. Leave them be. Come on, Maxie. Vita, stop crying. Come on, I'll read you both a story. Gran shook her head. That's plain silly. Rewarding them for temper tantrums. She glared at me. And why are you standing there looking so gormless, Em? Can't you keep your little brother and sister out of mischief for 2 minutes? That was so horribly unfair, I couldn't bear it. Why should I always have to sort them out just because I'm the eldest? I'm not their mother, I said. Now stop that. You should be glad to help out. Your own mother is doing her best, but she can't cope. I can cope. You mind your own business, Mum, our mum shouted. I know you mean well, but I'm sick of you bossing the kids around and being so strict with them all the time. They're not being deliberately naughty. They're unhappy. We're all bloody miserable. Oh, for pity's sake, I'm only trying to help, said Gran. It's time you got a grip. It's been months since that idiot walked out. Can't you get over him? No, I can't, said Mum. Come on, kids. We'll go upstairs and leave Gran in peace. Are we still being sent to bed? Said Vita as we went upstairs. Well, how about we all go and have a cuddle in my bed, said Mum. Just Vita and Maxie, I said. No, you too, Em, darling, all of us. We'll read stories and play games, and I've got some chocolate tucked away somewhere. We all got into our night things and crammed into Mum's bed, though it was a bit of a squash. Dad stroked Vita's pillow. Is it lonely not having Dad to cuddle up with? She said. Of course it's lonely, Vita, I said. I still often heard Mum crying if I had to get up in the night and go to the loo. Yes, it's very lonely, Mum said. I sometimes take Dad's pillow and tuck it beside me, and then in the middle of the night when I'm asleep, as if he's there. You can borrow dancers sometimes if you like, said Vita, making Dancer stroke Mum. You can have one of my teddies, said Maxie, patting Mum too. Mum started talking more about Dad, telling us all the things she really missed. The way he hummed under his breath, the way he'd always invent some new sweet pet name for her, the way he hugged her, the feel of his long dark plait. Vita and I started crying, remembering too. Maxie stayed dry-eyed, his pats changing to sharp little slaps. Shut up, Mum, he said. Shut up, shut up, shut up! Now then, Maxie, you know you're not supposed to say shut up. And I don't want to shut up. I want to talk about Dad and how sad I am. I want you three to talk about him too. It might help you feel a bit better if we talk about him. Maxie's forgotten, Dad, Vita snuffled. Don't be silly, sweetheart. Of course he hasn't, said Mum. He has. Maxie, who's Dad? Said Vita. Don't know. Shut up, said Maxie, struggling to come out from under the covers. Shush now, Maxie. Snuggle back in, said Mum. Oh dear. I don't know if we should talk about Dad yet. He's coming back soon, Mum. We know he is, said Vita. Well, we wish he'd come back, said Mum. Em wished it. It will come true. We mustn't ever give up. That's right, isn't it, Em? Dancer says so. I took Dancer and made her nod her head. I'm magic, my dears. I live with Santa and he's taught me all his little tricks. He frequently confided in me. I was his right-hand reindeer. I made Dancer wave her right paw in the air, showing off. They all laughed. I did too. It was so weird. I was working Dancer, making all of it up as I went along. And yet it was almost as if she was a real separate person, saying things I'd never thought of. She told us a long story about a child who asked for her dad to come back as her Christmas present. Santa had to search for his dad all the way across the world to Australia. It was stiflingly hot and sunny, so Santa went as red as his robes, and this very reindeer, they were all exhausted, so they cooled off on Bondi Beach. Santa paddled with his robes tucked around his waist, showing his baggy long john pants. Dancer and all the other reindeers swam in the surf, seaweed swinging from their antlers. They all renewed their search and found the dad shearing sheep. It turned out he was on a remote farm and there wasn't a postbox, so he didn't know how much his daughter was missing him. As soon as he realised, he jumped onto the sleigh with Santa and Dancer, and the team of reindeers galloped all the way across the world. The dad jumped off the sleigh at dawn and went running to the house. He woke up his little daughter, and she cried, "Daddy, oh my daddy," said Vita. She frowned. But if Santa was dashing off to Australia and back, how could he deliver all the presents too? I don't know, I said, irritated. He can manage anything. He's magic, like I said. I think your story was magic, Em, said Mum. You're so good at making up stories. You obviously take after Dad. He could always make up wonderful things. She can't take after Dad, said Vita. He's not Em's real dad. He's my dad. He's been a lovely dad to Em too, said Mum. I think he's helped her make up some super stories. You should write them down, Em. I'd love to keep them. To show Dad when he comes back? Mum sighed. Darling, we've got to start thinking he's not coming back. He is coming, Mum. He is, I said. Oh, do you really think if we say it enough times it will come true? Said Mum. It will, I said. Definitely, said Vita. Yes. Yep, Maxie mumbled, but he was half asleep. The next day, Mum sidled up to me when she came home from work. Here, Em, I've got you a little present. Don't let on to Vita and Maxie or they'll feel hard done by. She handed me a paper bag. There was a familiar rectangular shape inside. Oh, Mum, is it the new Jenna Williams book? You and that Jenna Williams. No, take a look. I took a red, shiny book out of the bag. I tried not to feel disappointed. I opened it up and saw blank pages. It's for your dancer stories. Oh. I wasn't sure if this was such a good idea. It was much easier just telling them. If I wrote them all down, I'd have to make a plan and remember all the boring stuff about punctuation and paragraphs and never begin a sentence with and. Mum looked at me anxiously. Great, I said, Sarniffles. Thank you very much. You don't have to write the stories, said Mum. I just thought it might help take your mind off things. But it's not meant to be hard work. It's meant to be fun. Do I have to do it like at school? No, you write however you want, said Mum. Draw pictures too, if you like. I started to get more enthusiastic. I decided I'd do lots of pictures. I'd colour them in. I'd maybe use some new felt tips. Maxie never seemed to use them nowadays. He'd done a handful of wonky donut people during the Christmas holidays, but then he scribbled all over them with a black pen. Gran said she'd take them away from him if he just did silly scribbling, though she said it wasn't Maxie's fault. He was far too young to own such an expensive set of pens. Mum said Gran didn't have the right to take them away from Maxie, though she did privately beg Maxie to use them properly. She'd found a lot of black scribble on the wall beside Maxie's mattress and had spent ages scrubbing them. Maxie didn't use his pens at all after that, though he guarded the big tin carefully and shrieked if Vita or I went near them. I waited until he was asleep in his bear lair and Vita was cuddled up with Dancer. Then I crept out of bed, tiptoed across the carpet and very cautiously felt under Maxie's mattress. I found the big, smooth tin of felt pens and gently eased them, careful not to make them rattle. I took them to the bathroom with me. I put all the towels bunched up in the bath to cushion it, and then hopped in with my new notebook and Maxie's pens. I opened the red notebook up and smoothed out the first page. I selected the black pen, ready to write Dancer, the reindeer, in my best swirly writing. The black came out as faint grey. It was all used up. Maxie had obviously been doing a lot of secret scribbling somewhere or other. It looked like Mum was going to have to buy another can of scouring powder. I chose the scarlet pen instead. Sorry. It came out the palest pink. Maxie had used up all the red too. I tried the gold, the purple, the brightest blue. They were all completely nearly used up. The only pens still working were Maxie's least favourite colours, the dark greens and all the browns. I couldn't understand it. I'd not seen Maxie using them. How could they possibly be all used up already? I had to start my Dancer story using my own inferior gel pens. I didn't know how to get started properly. It sounded so silly and babyish writing Dancer the reindeer did that, did this, did that, etc. It was so much more interesting when she told her own story. I had a sudden idea. I crept back to the bedroom, eased Dancer out from under Vita, and went back to my special bath. I put Dancer on my right hand and tucked a pen between her paws. "What's this?" she said, twiddling it round. "You know what it is. It's my special pink gel pen to match your pretty pink nose. I want you to write a story for me, Dancer. Tell it like an autobiography, right from the beginning, when you were born." "When I was a tiny fawn, all big eyes and no antlers," said Dancer. She breathed in deeply, wriggled the pen more, and comfortably in her paws, she began. "I am Dancer, a reindeer. I was born in a blizzard, such a deeply snowy night that my poor mother could not find shelter for us. She did her best, arching her poor weary body over me, while I nuzzled into her weakly, up to my snout in thick snow. You would think this chilly start in life would leave me susceptible to colds. But although I am a dainty build and now in my middle years, I've always prided myself on my stout constitution. I never have a cold or a chill or any bout of flu. My nose stays prettily pink, never ever red or shiny. I wish I was seriously blemished. I would feel I was seriously blemished if I was famous for being a red-nosed reindeer and had a popular song written about me. I do not wish to boast, but I am sure I am equally famous for my dancing skills. I can do ballroom, I can bop like a demon, I can tap up a storm, but speciality is ballet. I am the Anna Pavlova of the reindeer kingdom." I pressed Dancer's pink nose and made the sugar plum fairy noise tinkle. Dancer twirled round and round, her net skirt whirling. She pirouetted up and down the bath and then jumped on and off the taps. "I'm doing my tap dance now," she announced. We both hooted with laughter. "Em?" Mum knocked on the door at the bathroom. "Em, what are you doing in there? What are you doing out of bed? Who's in there with you?" "Just Dancer, Mum," I said, clambering out of the bath to let her in. "You and Dancer. You're a daft girl," Mum said. "I can't get over the way you kids act like she's real. You're daft as a brush, babe. Still, you're good at making up her stories. Have you started writing them in your new book?" "Yep," I said, flashing the page at her. "You've been writing in the bath?" said Mum, looking at all the scrunched up towels. "It's my special writing couch, Mum," I said. "For goodness sake, you're not meant to be writing now. You're meant to be fast asleep in bed." "Haven't you ever heard of burning the midnight oil, Mum? I'm inspired." "You've got an answer for everything, my Em," said Mum, giving me a hug. "Let's read your story then." "Not yet. Not until it's all finished," and I filled the book right up. There, it was a good idea of mine, wasn't it? I got blank pages instead of lines so you could do as many pictures as you like. Maybe Maxie will let you borrow his fancy felt tips if you ask him really nicely. "Maybe," I said. I decided not to tell on Maxie. I needed to do my own investigating first. I didn't tackle him directly. I simply kept an eye on him the next day. I watched him sneak the dark brown pen out of his tin and stick it down his when he was getting dressed. I followed him around dodgily, though he was very tiring. Maxie dashed here, charged there, darted up and down the stairs, running riot everywhere. He jumped on Mum, he badgered Gran, he tugged my hair, he pinched Vita. He knocked cornflakes packet over, he spilled his juice down his front, he tripped over the vacuum and screamed blue murder, but he didn't take the felt pen out of his sock to scribble. I waited patiently, biding my time. Maxie went to the loo. I followed him upstairs to the bathroom and waited outside. I waited and waited and waited. Gran was right. Maxie had started to take an awfully long time in the loo. I was needing to go myself. I got fed up waiting and knocked on the door. Maxie, come on out. You must be finished by now. Go away, Em, Maxie said, the other side of the door. Maxie, you've been in there 15 minutes. What's the matter? Have you got a tummy upset? No, just bog off, Maxie yelled crossly. He knew he wasn't meant to say this. It was an expression he picked up off a television programme and it drove Gran nuts. I'm not bogging off anywhere, Maxie. You come out. I paused. I know what you're up to in there, I hissed through the keyhole. No, you don't, said Maxie, but he sounded panicked. You come out or I'll tell, I threatened. Maxie went quiet. Then he suddenly unlocked the door and came out. You're not allowed to lock yourself in, you know that, I said. What if you get stuck? I'd jump out of the window, said Maxie. Like this. He jumped along the hallway like a frog. He was jumping slightly awkwardly, his hand clamped over his t-shirt. I knew there was a problem. He was hiding something. I played along with him, jumping too, pretending to be a fellow frog. Maxie croaked delightedly, wobbled and threw his arms out. It was my chance. I slipped my hand up his t-shirt and grabbed. I came away with a giant wad of crumbled pink glue roll. Yuck, I said, dropping it immediately. Don't, Maxie screamed, although I had already done it. Maxie, what are you playing at? You throw the loo roll down the toilet. You don't stick it up your t-shirt, I said. I caught hold of his wrists as he scrabbled to get it back from me. Give it back, Maxie roared. No, it's dirty, I cried. But when I looked properly, I saw it hadn't been used in the way I'd feared. There were at least 20 separate sheets of loo roll. Each one had been scribbled over with Maxie's brown pen. Not any old silly scribble. This was a very carefully, painstaking, up and down long string of nearly letters, all the way up and down to the bottom of each strip. There was a big wobbly M for Maxie and a whole line of uneven kisses. These are a lot of letters, Maxie, I said. I let go and started smoothing them out. Give them back, Maxie said, hitting me. Who are those letters to, Maxie? I asked, although of course I knew. Shut up, Em, Maxie wailed. Emily, what are you doing with your little brother? Gran called from downstairs. Nothing, Gran. I'm sticking his head down the toilet and using it as a toilet brush, I called. You're doing what? Gran shrieked. Joke, Gran, just joking, I said. I'm just sorting Maxie out, that's all. Then I knelt in front of Maxie on the landing, my nose nearly touching his. They are letters to Dad, aren't they, Maxie? You haven't forgot about him one little bit. You just don't want to talk about him because it hurts, right? No, said Maxie, but big fat tears were starting to spurt down his cheeks. What are you saying in your letters? Are you asking him to come back? I'm saying I'll be a big brave boy if he does come back, Maxie wept. Dad doesn't mind you being little and silly, I said. I gave him a big hug. He struggled for a bit and then relaxed against me, rubbing the thatch of his black hair into my neck. I've written him millions and millions of letters. What do you do with them all? I posted them, properly, in the postbox down the shops. Gran wasn't looking, Maxie said proudly. I thought of all those tattered loo rolls, letters, clogging up the bottom of the postbox, and I nearly cried too.